As twilight descended over the rugged rosebud terrain, the air in Custer's camp grew tense with the anticipation of action. This was no ordinary night. The scouts had been summoned for a mission that would push them to their limits. With orders to locate the elusive Sioux camp before dawn, they set out under the cloak of darkness, guided by the Crow Scouts' intimate knowledge of the land. What followed was a series of critical moments, a fusion of bravery, tension, and foreboding that would bring them closer to a decisive encounter with history. We were eating supper at our temporary camp along the Rosebud when, shortly after dusk, Crooked Horn was summoned to Custer's quarters. Upon returning, he told us, "Come, Black Fox, Red Foolish Bear strikes the lodge, Red Star strikes the bear, and Bull." These scouts reported to Custer's headquarters, where they saw 4 ponies belonging to the Crow Scouts, saddled and ready. Standing outside his tent was Custer, accompanied by Gerard, who addressed the scouts. "Longhair wants you to know that tonight you will not sleep. You are to go ahead of us and locate the Sioux camp. Do your utmost to find it. Travel through the night, and if you haven't found the camp by morning, continue until noon. If your efforts are fruitless by then, return to our camp. The Crow Indians will guide you, as they are familiar with this land." At that moment, Charlie Reynolds, whom the Arikara called Lucky Man, appeared with his horse saddled. He was to serve as their interpreter. The 4 Crow Scouts were known to the Arikara as Big Belly, Strikes Enemy, Comes Leading, Man with Fur Belt, and Curly Head. Their interpreter was a white man named Mitch Booyer, whom the Arikara called Man Wearing Calfskin Vest. He accompanied the group, bringing their number to 12. Custer added, "Shortly after you depart, we will begin our march." The scouts set off, their horses moving quickly across the rugged terrain. Led by the Crows, they traveled directly from the camp along the Rosebud's left bank toward Custer Butte. They paused along the way to smoke, during which a Crow Scout used signs to convey that they would reach a high mountain by daybreak. From there, they would have a clear view of the surrounding hills, which would appear flat from that vantage point. They continued riding and reached a small grove where they stopped again to smoke. A Crow Scout signaled that they were near their destination. When they arrived at the base of the mountain, the same Crow Scout, their leader, indicated that they had reached the place and instructed them to climb up. They ascended and dismounted at the summit closest to their camp on the Rosebud, pausing to smoke together on the hilltop. By the time they reached the top, it was daybreak. I saw 2 of the Crow Scouts climbing to the highest peak. I had brought some coffee tied to my saddle to give to Bob-tailed Bull the night before. I was instructed to offer it to the Crow Scouts and started toward them when I heard the crows make an owl-like call, clear but soft, much like the Sioux call. The scouts were all gathered together when they noticed 2 Crow Scouts returning from the highest point of the hill. These 2 scouts approached the Arikara scouts and touched them. The Arikara scouts started to sing their customary song, but the Crow Scouts motioned for them to remain silent. One of the 2 Crow Scouts then came over to Crooked Horn and used hand signals to convey that they had spotted Dakota teepees ahead. At this, all the scouts ascended the peak to search for signs of the Dakotas. The first 2 Crow Scouts gestured toward the location of the Dakota camp. As Crooked Horn and Red Star observed, Crooked Horn said, "Look closely, my boy. Your eyesight is better than mine." Red Star focused and noticed a dark shape with thin smoke rising above it, coming from the Dakota teepees. The smoke appeared at the upper end of the village. The teepees were obscured by the high ridge, but the smoke was clearly visible as it drifted upward. Beyond the smoke, Red Star spotted some dark specks that he believed were horses. Charlie Reynolds studied the scene for a long time, then pulled out his field glasses and examined it again for an extended period. Afterward, he set the glasses down, nodded, and took out a notebook. He sat down to write a note, folded the paper, and handed it to Crooked Horn. Crooked Horn accepted the note, then turned to Red Star and said, Boy, saddle your pony. Bull, saddle your pony. Once they had prepared their ponies, Crooked Horn added, "Look, you can see the smoke from our camp." Red Star observed a plume of smoke rising in the distance, signaling their path back was clear. They could follow the smoke. He began descending the hill, and once at the bottom, he urged his horse forward, focused on the note he carried, paying no attention to his companion. Occasionally, he glanced back to check on Bull, whose horse was in poor condition. As he emerged from the hollow, he spotted the sentries and gave the customary call, a signal used by Arikara scouts to announce their arrival with a message. This same call was also a tradition among Crow scouts when delivering important news to camp. At the same time, he maneuvered his horse in a zigzag pattern, a visual sign to indicate he had located the enemy. Before leaving camp, he had told Stabbed that if he returned with news of finding the Dakota camp, he would tie up his horse's tail, a practice commonly followed by the Arikara to signify success. The sun was just rising as he arrived at camp. Sentries started gathering in small groups. Stabbed approached him and said, "My son, you have done something truly significant." In Arikara culture, delivering such a critical message was considered a great honor and a mark of distinction. Red Star rode past Stabbed, dismounted, and unsaddled his horse. Stabbed then turned and called out to the scout camp, "Why are you still sleeping? Strikes the bear, Red Star has returned." Bloody Knife immediately rose and approached Red Star, asking if he had seen anything. Red Star confirmed, saying they had located the camp. Soon after, Gerard arrived alongside Custer, and they went to the spot where Bloody Knife had unsaddled. Tom Custer was also present. Custer knelt on his left knee beside Red Star, who was crouched down holding a cup of coffee. Using gestures, Custer asked Red Star if he had seen the Dakotas. Red Star responded with a sign indicating that he had. He then pulled a note from his coat and handed it to Custer, who read it immediately and nodded. Standing near Red Star were Bloody Knife and Tom Custer. Using gestures and referring to Tom, Custer said to Bloody Knife, "Your brother over there is frightened. His heart quivers with fear, and his eyes dart nervously at the news of the Sioux. When we defeat the Sioux, he will finally become a man." Custer then instructed Red Star, through an interpreter, to saddle up immediately. "We are returning to where his group is waiting on the hill," he added. Red Star had not finished his breakfast but left his coffee, accidentally tipping it over with his foot. He quickly saddled his horse and joined the group. The party included Custer, his bugler, Tom Custer, Red Star, Gerard, Bloody Knife, Bobtailed Bull, and Little Brave. They rode swiftly toward the hill, and as they departed the camp, Red Star heard the bugler sounding a call, turning backward on his horse to play it. Custer gestured to Red Star, asking if the hill was close, and Red Star responded with signs that it was. Upon reaching the base of the hill, Red Star indicated that this was the spot. They ascended the hill and found the scouts. Charlie Reynolds approached and went ahead with Custer, leaving the rest behind. Reynolds pointed out a specific area for Custer to observe, and they spent some time looking before Gerard joined them. Gerard called back to the scouts, "Custer does not believe it is a Sioux camp." Custer assumed that Charlie Reynolds had only spotted the white buttes of the ridge that hid the lone teepee. Charlie Reynolds then pointed again, clarifying Custer's error. After taking another look, Custer acknowledged the signs of a camp. Charlie Reynolds then used his field glasses, handing them to Custer, who looked through them at the Dakota camp and nodded once more. Crooked Horn instructed Gerard to ask Custer how he would feel if he came across 2 dead Dakotas at the hill. The scouts had previously observed 6 Dakota warriors after Red Star and Bull had departed. 2 of these men had crossed over the ridge and descended the dry coulee, while the other 4 had entered the timber at the base of the hill. The scouts believed the 2 Dakotas intended to ambush the messengers and wanted to eliminate them preemptively. They refrained, fearing Custer might disapprove. When asked, Custer responded, that it would have been acceptable, stating he would have welcomed finding 2 dead Dakotas. The scouts then sat down, and one of the Crow scouts, Big Belly, also known as Half Yellowface, stood and, through the Crow interpreter, questioned Custer about the Dakota camp he had observed. Custer remarked, "This camp is unaware of our presence. None of their scouts have spotted us." Big Belly countered, "You claim we have not been seen, but the Sioux we observed at the base of the hill, 2 going one way and 4 the other, are skilled scouts. They have noticed the smoke from our camp." Custer, with irritation, replied, "I repeat, we have not been detected. That camp is unaware of us. I will proceed with what I believe is best. I intend to wait until nightfall before advancing, surrounding the Sioux camp with our forces." Big Belly objected, "This plan is flawed and should not be carried out." Custer reaffirmed, "I have stated my course of action. I will wait until it is dark and proceed with my strategy." Red Star, as he sat listening, initially thought that Custer's strategy was sound. The Crow scouts argued that the Dakota scouts had already spotted the army and would alert their forces, leading to an attack on Custer's troops. They urged him to launch an immediate assault that same day, seizing the Dakota horses to hinder their ability to move quickly. Custer responded, "Yes, it will be done as you suggest." The army then reached the base of the hill, and Custer's group descended and rejoined the main force. In the end, the scouts' journey was not just a mission to locate the Dakota camp. It was a testament to the collaboration, skill, and cultural exchanges among the Arikara, Crow, and their military counterparts. Red Star and his companions not only carried messages across treacherous terrain, but also bore the weight of decisions that would shape the course of their campaign. As dawn broke and the scouts delivered their findings, the stage was set for a confrontation that would etch itself into the annals of history.